Chances are, if you're watching this video, that it either showed up in your feed or you're one of those people dear to my heart who have subscribed to my channel and this video showed up in your notifications. I'll take a few moments here to describe what has happened in my life, but also in the life of this channel since I consistently started posting on the rights of Palestinian people and about what's happening in Gaza. So I recorded my first video immediately after the Hamas attack and the deaths of civilians and taking of hostages by Hamas. And I condemned it then, and I still condemn it, because for me, an armed resistance has to be completely not targeted at civilians. That video was hoping to see through the conflict and maybe articulate some form of reaching peace between the state of Israel and future state of Palestine. And then I suddenly started getting, interesting comment. So I turned my comments off on that video. But you can watch it. The second, in my view, the important conversation which I had with you and with the world was when, after observing what was going on in Gaza, after the destruction of life in Gaza, because that was my fear, that Israel, there is a combination of factors that would make Israel unleash the most brutal assault on Gaza. One, Netanyahu's own political troubles and legal troubles. Two, the current coalition government in Israel is the most right-wing coalition in Israeli history. And three, the government of Israel knew that they had previously gotten away with invasions of Palestinian territories, and for them this was supposed to be something similar. But my fear was that it will probably be the most brutal assault on Palestinian lives. But then something started happening here in the US and the world. People started seeing young children killed, Palestinians starving, and that moved the world. It launched a movement. People stopped being afraid of calling Israel's actions exactly what they were: horrendous, terrible, and cruel. Now, don't get me wrong. I have been a supporter of Palestinian rights all my life. But I also know, living in the United States, the perils of speaking for Palestinian people. But this was something new. And of all the people, of course, scholars like Judith Butler and Henry Giroux started writing about it and gave their statements. But one person who opened the floodgates for those of us who now openly criticize the policies and actions of State of Israel, it was Senator Bernie Sanders. Because he has the voice, the platform, and the legitimacy to say things that so many of us could not say. He opened that space for us. And there are other Jewish organizations as well, but I give credit to Bernie Sanders. So that video, which you can watch, in that video, I basically analyzed how the grounds had shifted. And after Gaza, people had started seeing Israel differently. They had started seeing Israel as a brutal occupying force which was willing to starve millions of people, which was vengeful and whose soldiers were committing atrocities. Now, I didn't turn off the comments on that video. I will talk about the comments in a minute. Then another video that I recorded because I wanted to think philosophically about what occupation does to people, what a brutal occupation does to people. So I went to Fanon, Frantz Fanon, from Martinique and eventually Algerian, and I, using his work on Algeria, The Wretched of the Earth, and even before that, Black Skin, White Masks, I then used in his insights to talk about Gaza and talk about occupied territories and what this occupation does to the psyche of the occupied. And then my journey continued, of course. I did my research on arrest and prosecution of Palestinian children. I did not speculate in that video. I used an extensive report by UNICEF, which is available online, and I used another report, contemporary report by Defense for Children International, their Palestinian researchers. With their immaculate research, I was able to point to not just the number of arrests and the military court system and how it works. I was able to convincingly prove to any person who would be willing to read or watch that video that this was an illegal system of justice. This was an unjust system of justice, and that it needed to be dismantled. So these are some of the issues upon which I have shared my thoughts with you. Now let's go over the response. I'm happy to report, thanks to you and so many others like you, majority of comments on these videos are positive, supportive, empathetic, and sympathetic. These are people who care about Palestinian lives and who are willing to put their words to a person they do not know but whose video they have watched. So I am deeply grateful for that, because those comments, those suggestions, those views matter for someone like me. They matter because I know the perilous terrain in the United States of speaking for Palestinian people. But that sustains me. But there was a range of negative comments that also came my way. The first one is obvious. One of the ones that's often repeated is that you are increasing hatred for Israel. So here is my challenge to everyone who watches these videos. There are 28 videos on Palestine in my Palestine playlist. Find me one instance where my words are hateful, where I'm even inciting hate for the state of Israel. No. The hatred or the distrust of Israeli government is growing because of their actions. They themselves are inviting that scrutiny. And the reason they are inviting that scrutiny isn't because they previously were not doing these actions. It's because this time the world is different. This time, despite what the social media are trying to control and the mainstream media are trying to control, the images, the words are getting out. People are openly speaking about it. Courageous people. And then people like journalists and scholars, even politicians. Another comment that often comes up And which is interesting because the people writing it don't even realize about their own racism, is because some of them say, well, from your name, we knew that you were anti-Israel. I don't know how you know it from a person's name that they are anti-Israel, but that comes up too. In terms of my video on Fanon and you using Fanon to explain Gaza, some people who have completely either not read Fanon or misread Fanon still wanted to blame the Palestinians, for their actions. There is no way I can fix that, because in order for them to understand what I'm trying to say, they have to read Fanon and then understand how construction of psyche and resolution of Oedipus complex works, right? By and large, the most negative comments came my way on my video on the incarceration of Palestinian children. One comment that often shows up is, well, children get prosecuted in America and in Britain too. Yes, they do. They are prosecuted, but when they are prosecuted, there are legal aspects of it. The arrest is under certain law. They are never interrogated without a lawyer or without their guardians and parents present, and they have access to due process throughout. If they've done something terrible, the court system, before even proceeding to the case, will have a psych evaluation. These are all the protections put in place to protect even children who might have done the most horrible thing. What I was saying is that these children are arbitrarily arrested, abused, tortured even, and summarily sentenced. And the example that I used was of a 17-year-old who had been kept imprisoned for more than 41 weeks without a trial. The point in that video was that children as old as 11 years old to 17-year-olds are arrested in the middle of the night, banged around, transported away from their parents without a warrant, without telling their parents where they will be, and without telling them what they are charged for. And that it was systemic. It wasn't an aberration. And there are quite a few other personal attacks which I don't feel like talking about. I mean, we live in a world where there are thousands upon thousands of you who love humanity and add your words of support. And then there are those who already have their mind made up and who are full of hate. So, to sum up this journey with you, speaking with the Palestinian people, sharing whatever I learn about what happens to them, hoping for a better future for them, started earlier in my life. And maybe this platform and your presence has given me a space where I can build a body of work in which you are involved and engaged, so that we can constantly keep speaking for the rights of Palestinian people. Now, I am a student of Paulo Freire. Revolutionary praxis for me cannot be devoid of love, even love for those I disagree with. And that is what I have tried to infuse in these videos. They don't come from a place of hate. They come from a place of hope and love. Love for the humanity. Even my critique is mounted with that love. It is, in my humble opinion, in the best interest of United States, if they just look at their interest and not their moral obligations, right? And State of Israel to find first a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and stop the atrocities as they are happening right now. But eventually to find peace, a peace in which Palestinians are not robbed of more of their land, in which they have an autonomous nation state which they can build with the help of the world, and where they can live freely and make their own choices. It is not impossible to do if the powers that be, United States, Britain, State of Israel, if they really want peace. If they just want a perpetual conflict that lets them keep self-justifying themselves, then they are on a wrong path. And maybe that suits the politicians now, but in the long run, when a group of people dehumanizes others, subjugates them, that dehumanization always comes back home. Because there is no way you can dehumanize another person and subjugate them and not lose a part of your own humanity. That is how I understand it, how human actions come back to define us. So that's all I wanted to say in this video, to point to this journey, to respond to some of the criticism, or at least share them with you, but most importantly, to thank you all for your constant support, your words of encouragement for me, but also, more importantly, your constant support for the people of Palestine. And I will, for as long as I'm alive and have my faculties together, continue speaking for the rights of the Palestinian people. Thank you so much. The Palestine playlist will come up. If you have time, please do watch it and let me know what you think. Share your thoughts with me. I am grateful for your support. And please stay safe, take care of each other, and as always, from me to you, peace and love.